Do, 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 do. Howdy, howdy. I hope we can solve some of the problems people have identified from yesterday. One of them being the glare on the computer screen, because I'm looking down at the screen and looking up at the Facebook camera, and that's kind of a problem. The good news is once we find that 14-year-old with superpowers, we're going to have a lot of these production problems straightened out. But for now, you got Seat of the Pants Productions here. Good Saturday to you. And this is not a normal, I don't want you to get used to the idea of a Saturday podcast on this. My wife would prefer that I didn't do it on Saturdays. Jay Delancey, alias Vote Checker. Today is Saturday, September 25th. And today I want to talk to you about the aftermath of Arizona, the so what factor of Arizona. It just dawns on me, we may have a problem here. How's that? Could that be better? All right, let's see. Where do we start? I've got to start. I've been remiss. I really mean it when I say today's the 25th. So why don't you get up in the morning? And if you're not going to take a long time reading the Bible, at least read one chapter of Proverbs. There's 31 chapters in Proverbs, 31 days in the month. Coincidence? I think not. Today's the 25th, and what jumped out at me was Proverbs 25:2, and it says, "It is the glory of God to conceal things, but the glory of kings is to search things out." But enough about the Arizona audit. Okay, it's the glory of God to conceal things. It is not the glory of man. It is not the glory of kings. It is the glory of God to conceal things. It is the glory of kings to search things out. Who are the kings in our society? King Kami Harris, King Kamehameha, King Biden. Yeah, he'll search these things out for you. How about King Josh Stein? Yeah, he'll search these things out for you. Stein, yeah, he's a good attorney general, right? Yeah. You know, funny thing is, North Carolina has never elected a Republican attorney general in modern history. Think about that. Since Reconstruction, we've had red waves galore. We had Jim Martin, red wave election. That was Reagan. Let's see, 94, I believe, was a red wave. 2010, that didn't count because there was no attorney general race. Actually, yeah, okay. I guess 94 didn't count either because that would be 96 they'd have 92, 96. Yeah, anyway, we've had some red wave years, and 2016 was a red wave year. But gosh darn, the voters of North Carolina did not want a Democrat governor, or Democrat attorney general, or Democrat. I mean, they did not want a Republican in governor, attorney general, state auditor, and secretary of state. Funny how that works. It's just, boy, I'll tell you what, North Carolinians know what we want, and boy, we don't want Republicans in those positions, apparently. Or there's something else going on. I call it black box voting. Arizona yesterday, unless you lived under a rock, you probably heard, or wait a minute, I should say, unless you lived under a rock or watch mainstream media, you probably, unless those two things happen, you probably heard that, something went boom yesterday. Now I'm going to start with the news. Now, those of you who are watching this on Facebook, I will read to you. But I'm telling you, you might want to check out the podcast of it, the video podcast of it, or check out the website, voterintegrityproject.com. We'll have that pirate symbol you saw earlier. Let me just show it one more time here. We will have that on the, got it. We'll have that on our, that'll be the symbol for today's story. Because you really need to look at the letter. So what happened was the Honorable, Senator, try this again, Senator Karen Fann, she's Senate President they, unlike North Carolina, by the way, the president of the Senate here is some guy you might know and love named Mark Keith Robinson. He's also known as the lieutenant governor. But in Arizona, the Senate president is the Speaker of the Senate, the head of the Senate, majority leader, whatever you want to call him. In this case, it's a she, and it's Karen Fan. Fan Club. See what I did there? Okay, they have term limits there. 6 years when you go to the Arizona Senate or go to the Arizona House, you got 6 years. And what you get out of that is people want to make their mark and move on. Now, I'm not a fan of term limits in Washington. That's a whole different story. I'm not there yet. I might get there one day, but I'm not there yet. What I am in favor of is, Timmy Moore has been Speaker of the House since 2014. Man, but forget about his years in the House before then. And Phil Berger, good golly, he's been in the Senate a long time. And since 2012, he's been top dog in the Senate. He got elected 2010. He got elected the majority in 2010. Wow, so that's 11 years. I'm telling you, there's a certain crustiness about it, and they take their caucus fund and they decide they want to use their caucus fund to stab conservatives in the back, to primary them, to sabotage their efforts. They spend too much time on palace politics instead of doing the people's work. And the 6-year term limit, I kind of like that for that, the state level. And boy, that might be an issue that many primary challengers want to run on. In addition to auditing the elections, need to put term limits in at the state level, because we see some good results in Arizona. It brings in new blood. It prevents the cronies, the John McCainiacs, from staying in the Arizona House and Senate too long. And believe me, North Carolina has their own version of John McCain. I won't mention him by name, but that spirit lives in one of our esteemed leaders. He whose name should not be mentioned. Okay, let's digress. Okay, Senator Fan wrote a letter to the Attorney General. This is a pretty devastating report. The first letter, I've attached reports delivered earlier today to the Arizona State Senate concerning the Maricopa County forensic election audit. Okay, and she goes on to the bona fides of the events, the history of democracies from ancient Athens to today. By the way, we're not a democracy, we're a representative republic. If you don't believe me, look up democracy in your Constitution, in the US Constitution, you won't see it. We are a republic, Article 4, Section 4 says so. But she, Karen Fan, I love her to death, but she said in the history of democracies from ancient Athens to today, ours was the most detailed, demanding, and uncompromising election audit that has ever been conducted. The auditor spent more than 100,000 hours and millions of dollars reviewing ballots, voting machines, and data patterns. Arizona voters had serious concerns about their election, and they were entitled to the most careful and accurate answers possible. All right, I'm going to read a paragraph here that will make every never Trumper's heart go pitter patter. You never Trumpers, you got what you wanted out of this, and you can laugh if you want to, but don't laugh too long. Remember that thing about God's privilege to conceal things? Well, we have some kings in North Carolina. Phil Berger and Tim Moore, love them or not, they are little petty kings. And they have some abilities, some things they can do they're not doing, but they will. Okay, it says the auditor's hand count, which quadruple check every single one of the 2.1 million ballot, matches Maricopa's official machine count. This is the most important and encouraging finding of the audit. The paper ballots of Maricopa County are the best evidence of voter intent because they are under 24-hour video surveillance and physical security, and there is no reliable evidence that they were altered to any material degree. This finding, therefore, addresses the sharpest concerns about the integrity of the certified results of the 2010 general election. All right, I had a call from someone last night going, hey, we lose, it's over. And I was like, let me read some more. Let me look at it and see exactly what we have here, because that is not not what I would call good news to the to those who think we're going to find the evidence at that level to overturn the election, decertify Arizona, and get Trump in. Okay. And get Dan Forrest in if we do the same in North Carolina. He only lost by 250,000 votes, right? So, hey, yeah. All right. I'm not making fun of you, but I'm just giving you the messages that the Never Trumpers will give you, and the taunters on Facebook, and certain loudmouth attorneys that work for lawmakers who should stay away from the bottle when they get on social media. But anyway, the point here is that this looks like a pretty devastating blow to the Trump side. However, you got to look more carefully at it. I want to refer you back. We're going to go in the Wayback Machine. I'd forgotten about this until I was reading it in that book that I can't reach it. It's over there. The book I referenced yesterday called 13 Ballots by Elizabeth Harris. I recommend that book. I'm going to do a double pump on it. I recommend it. But she mentioned this too. And what happened was 2016 in the primary, a Durham election worker, very happy guy, he got busted big time. And then, of course, the headline says a former Durham County elections worker. He was an election worker at the time he committed the crime, but now he's a former because he got fired and then he got convicted. This kind of reminds me when school teachers get busted for molesting children. They say a former Wake County school teacher. It's like, good propaganda, WRL, but we're on to you. We know what we're doing. Okay. A former Durham County elections worker has pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor related to the mishandling of provisional ballot results during the March 2016 primary election, officials said Wednesday. Richard Robert Rawling of Cherry last Friday to failure to discharge a duty of his office and was sentenced to 30 days in jail, suspended to a year on probation and $500 fine. So they slapped him on the PP there. But anyway, discovered the problem during a routine audit of primary results in 2016. Issues involve provisional ballots, which are given to voters who experience some sort of administrative issues when they show up at the polling place, such as a glitch in voter registration or trying to cast a ballot in the wrong precinct. Unlike regular ballots, provisional ballots aren't counted at a polling place on election day. Rather, they are collected and delivered to the County Board of Elections to determine whether they should be counted. And those deemed acceptable are then run through tabulators on the canvass day when all vote totals are certified. Investigators determined that Rawling ran or ordered subordinates to run provisional ballots through tabulators more than once and made manual changes to the ballot count so the results of the provisional canvass would match the number of approved provisional ballots. That was done to avoid having to report to the Durham County Board of Elections a discrepancy in the number of provisional ballots in the board's possession and the number counted on canvass day, officials said. All told, more than 1,900 provisional ballots were mishandled in one way or another. That's a breathtaking number for a resident of Wake County, Cary, who's working in Durham County, managing the elections at a precinct, who maneuvered the data that much, the ballots. Let's see, the funny thing about it is that if you don't look too deeply, the books would balance. That's the scary part about it. Like 1,900, that blows my mind. As the state officials said, the irregularities didn't affect the results of any race, and there was no evidence ballot counts were altered to favor a specific candidate or political party. There was no evidence ballot counts were altered. Okay, that's key right there. There was no evidence. Okay, now what happens when the reason, any poll worker knows this, the reason that this loser convicted, not even a felon, how disappointing, but anyway, the reason he had to do this was because he was letting people take their provisional ballot and stick it in the DS-200 tabulator machine. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to stick it in an envelope, seal the envelope, and let the Board of Elections open the envelope later, pull the ballot out. Well, it didn't happen because Brother Rawlings, I don't know, I should read more carefully into this. But from what I could tell, he had to cover his tracks because of gross negligence at the polls. So the problem is there were ballots that were counted that did somebody retrieve them and pull them out? At any rate, the numbers matched at the end of the day, but a corrupt election official had to balance the books and do some behind the scenes maneuvering to make it work. And he got convicted, had a big grand jury. I think that was a federal thing. Let's see, because the discrepancy, state board threw out the results of the mishandled ballots in order that scores of people be able to recast their votes. Rawlings resigned from the Durham County Board of Elections shortly after the primary. Okay, this kind of thing, I congratulate at the time the tainted director of elections, Kimberly Westbrook Strack, who's married to Phil Strack, who defended North Carolina's voter ID law, I might add, and lost. Those people, they did do some things right, and this was one of them. They prosecuted this guy, and it's just mighty interesting to see how the outcome, the numbers were not affected, and there was no evidence ballot counts were altered to favor a specific candidate or political party. And this is a key because a lot of times the dirty secret about elections is quite often there is no evidence. Voter impersonation fraud, there's no evidence, especially when you don't look for it. And you're spoiler alert, guys, you're not going to find it looking at data files. It's just not there. You'll see things that make you go, but you're not going to find evidence of voter impersonation fraud by looking at data. It's not going to happen. If it were that easy, election officials would do it. The only thing, that they're smart enough to find is maybe dead people who voted. And that can be, not always, but it can be a case of impersonation fraud. And what they did a couple of years ago, Kimberly Westbrook Strack put out her much vaunted post-election audit of the 2016 election. They found two people impersonating, and they were both Republicans, and they were both very sympathetic people who were sitting with their spouses on their dying bed and went ahead and voted for them because they just felt compelled to. Notice they didn't prosecute the woman that Larry Henson saw. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's elsewhere on our website. You might look up the term "she voted for a man." Google that term on our website and see it. Maybe I'll make a link to it here in today's subnotes if I remember to do it. I'll make a note here. Link to Henson. Henson, he saw the woman come in. She had an unusual birthmark on her face, so this was one that was easy to catch. Most of them are not that easy, and nobody notices. Henson was an observer. He noticed it. He went, The second time she came in, he noticed it. I've seen her before. She was here a while ago. I remember looking at her. She had an unusual look on her face. So he goes over to the chief judge. Chief judge blows him off, goes and talks to the woman, comes back to Larry and says, no, she's okay. He goes, no, I really saw her. He goes, no, it's okay. Meaning, if you argue with me, I will kick you out of here. There was no evidence. Okay, then what happens? Birthmark chick comes in a third time. Larry grab her physically, but he pointed her out to the chief judge and said, hey, this time you got to do something. I've seen her 3 times. You've seen her twice. You can't you can't sweep this under the rug. So Chiefy walks over there and says, looks at her ATV, and she's voting for a man. And it's like, oh, ma'am, who you voting for? My neighbor. And she wasn't, oh, you got me. She's like, my neighbor. You can't do that. And the lady, instead of being shamed or humbled, she bows up, says, you're taking away my neighbor's right to vote. Your neighbor, and got all huffy and stomped out and brought in 2 outside observers, one from the NAACP and one from a OSCE organization that's Operation Security and Cooperation in Europe, a subordinate of them, and I can't think of the name of them, but they're not the UN. And our video, it says UN because everyone thinks they're the UN, including me, until I got chewed out by one of their observers. It's like, no, we're not the UN. And it was really funny because it's like, okay, whatever. But it meant a lot to them. Okay, all right. But it's part of the, it's another globalist body, but it's smaller than the UN. It's more focused on Europe. But they go worldwide and they observe elections. So these guys walk in with the woman and they don't understand the woman was voting for a man. And they argue that she says her right to vote was taken away. So she went outside, bowed up and screamed and made all kinds of noise. And they came in with her and they were all puffy with her until finally Larry spoke up and said, did she tell you who she's voting for? And they look at her and say, who are you voting for? She goes, my neighbor. What? It wasn't your vote? No, it was my neighbor's. And the two observers, as Larry put it, the two observers kind of looked at each other and they took the lady by the elbow and they walked her out the door, just walked her out. And Larry watched and they walked her clear off the property. The chief judge never detained them, never took any action, never even wrote up an incident report of it, didn't signify who the voter was. She could have checked the signatures, but no, she just let it go. So we go back to the video, or back to Durham. There was no evidence. Ballot counts were altered to favor a specific candidate or political party. That's a polite way of saying we didn't see anything. We didn't see a thing. We saw no evidence of a crime. That's why the audit. Now, back to the audit. You think I digressed. Okay, I am back to Karen Fan's letter. And I'm reading some more. It says, but importantly, the audit shows how we can strengthen our democracy. I cringe 1,000 deaths when I hear a politician refer to us as a democracy. Several of the auditor's findings are concerning because they suggest less than perfect adherence to Arizona's standards and best practices. In my view, the most urgent issues include the following. All right. I'm going to read those to you in a moment, but let's talk about this in a second. People say voter ID, and I'm with you. I mean, these are our signs from the award-winning artist, Mark Peterson, who also was the award-winning artist who created this latest nifty symbol. We were big for voter ID long ago, and we still are, but you got to realize procedures are where it's at, because as we learned in the primary in 2016, even in good old Orange County, where there were Republicans working in the polls alongside with, self-confessed Democrats, and so we got word. I only got one word on this one. I got several confirmations that people were being disenfranchised, being hoodwinked out of voting. Unaffiliated voters are being hoodwinked out of pulling a Republican ballot because it was a primary. And they were basically lied to by the election officials. And they were, you can get a Democrat, Libertarian, or unaffiliated ballot. Oh, I forgot to mention, you can get a Republican ballot too, but who wants those? And that was in Orange County and Wake County. And one other sighting, we're not sure if it was in South Wake or in Harnett. We're not sure which. But anyway, we also got a report that a woman wasn't required to show her ID. And when she insisted, they kind of laughed and let her pull it out and didn't even look at it. She wouldn't go on video with it. So I did, never mind. She told me that, but she didn't want to go on film doing it. I wanted to get her on film. She wouldn't do it. So that was a limited use. The point is procedures. Procedures are everything. If people don't follow the procedures, the laws don't matter. And if people don't follow the procedures, by the way, they are breaking the law. Now think about that. If an election worker does not follow the procedures, they are committing a crime. It might be a class 2 misdemeanor, but it's still a crime. And they're getting away with it because there are no observers there. So you get voter ID and you go, well, I don't need to work at the polls as an observer because we got voter ID. Yeah, go back to sleep and watch as they don't check IDs. They might check yours. Walk in with the right little pin on, or maybe the right piece of paper in your hand, and they won't check your ID. They won't pay attention to it. Maybe. That's the question. That's the experiment. That's what an audit would do. That's what an inspector general team would do, is spot check stuff like that. My brother, Major Dave, he's not my brother, not my brother of another mother. He's a brother in Christ. We have a disagreement on this point because regarding how to conduct an audit. But I think he would agree. He and I agree on just about everything else. We do need some sort of audit team, inspector general team, oversight team with legislative authority to do everything, including red team, to go in and commit impersonation fraud to see if they get away with it, and then to pull them out later. Everything is on the table. These are our elections, the people's house, the legislature runs it, and they're taking a kickback, close your eyes, hand your ballot over to the nice person over there who sticks it in a black box and announces the results. I tell you, it's as corrupt as a certain political party's internal elections for party chair. Is that corrupt? And so it's really something that has to be fixed. You can't just put it in a machine. You have to have a process that people believe is right. Now, when I was in Strategic Air Command, we handled, one of my jobs for 4 years was to put the key in the slot, turn the key, and launch up to 50 ICBMs. Those are bombs that go boom. I was a missile launch control officer with a nifty little 5-round pistol in my pocket on my sidearm. And I turn your key, sir. Okay, what's the point? SAC, as much of a pain in the neck it was to work for, because they test you and they put you under a lot of pressure. But you're dealing with nuclear weapons, so they're going to treat you. They're going to put you under pressure, because nuclear war it's not the same as flying around in a jet, playing Jimmy Jet and having fun and screaming and hot dogging. It's not the same. It's a lot more serious. And the seriousness of it, they had this thing called the red team, and the red team would come in. And those are so much fun. Not from my end. I wasn't on a red team. I was on the receiving end when I was moved up the food chain and was working at Grand Forks Air Force Base. I was the guy who was putting the message out to part of the nuclear command control community, but my job was to launch the bombers and the tankers, because it's an integrated mission. It's called a PSYOP for a reason. The triad, the submarines, the bombers, and the missiles are part of the triad. And Trump was ridiculed in 2016 for flubbing that answer in a debate. It was one of those gotcha questions. See, he can't be president. He didn't know what the triad is. He gave a bad answer. But anyway, the Democrats pounce. Say, see, look at him. He's an idiot. But he's not. He knows what he's doing. He might have flubbed a stupid question in debate, but that whole other issue. My point is, we had a mission that involved nuclear bombs sitting on the wing of an airplane 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with the airplanes turned to where I won't tell you how long it would take, but in a very short time, we would have, on my word, on my message, those guys would run up to their airplanes, crank them up, get their navigation units up and running. They would decode and validate the message using procedures that we taught them. So they would know it wasn't some strange Russian giving them a message, some Russian hacking or something like that. They would confirm that the message was real, and they would roll to the taxiway, and then they would wait for further instructions, and with the right message, boom, they take off. And then the other messages, we could still call them back, but at a certain point, it was the point of no return. That was my job, and we had red teams that would come in to hack that system, or you might call them white hat hackers. They would come in, and they would just, in the course of about 2 weeks, they would show you all the things they did and got away with. And they'd write it to the report in front of everybody. They show it to the commander, and the commander's like, I'm not happy to see this, because it shows how lax people were in the commander's chain of command, in his universe. The wing commander controls maybe anywhere from 600 to 2,000 people. And he's like the captain of a ship. He's like captain of a really big ship, like an aircraft carrier. This carrier the wing commander at Whiteman, we had 20-something B-2 bombers. You talk about a lot of responsibility. It was an awesome job. But I was at Grand Forks. I didn't do the B-2s. I did the B-1s. And the point is, the red team would come in and do these things. Legislature, if you're listening, you want red team analysis of our elections. This is partly what an audit does. Now, I'm going to go in, hold that thought. Go Wolfpack. I mean, they're playing today. Okay. Karen Fan, she highlighted a few things that were pretty bad. And I'm going to go over them and put them in the context of North Carolina. So I'm not just going to talk about Arizona. This is the problem. The signature verification process for absentee ballots is imperfect and requires improvement and additional testing. Signatures on mail-in ballots should not be accepted unless they closely match the voter's authenticated signature on the file. Meanwhile, in North Carolina, Karen Prissy Bell said we cannot even look at them. And she ordered election workers twice prior to the election, don't even look at signatures, don't look at them. Now, Arizona uses, they use some banking forensic stuff. I think I did a post on it a while back. It's been a while, but it was, and I talked to one of the guys who designed it, a Polish scientist. Okay, he sounded Eastern European, sounded like he's from Ukraine, but I don't know my Ukraine from my Poland, but he was a nice man. And they designed it, and they made a boatload of money selling this proprietary software in the securities and banking industry to check electronic signatures. And Arizona, basically, you can dial it up. It's really fascinating science. I studied a little bit. It's very fascinating, and you can dial it up or dial it down. There's all these different rules, fractal sets that must match in order for the signatures to be deemed an accurate match. And you could just dial the number up or down, 24, 20, 19, 10, 0. And that's what happened in Arizona. They started at 24 and they said, this is taking too long because they had so many ballots and not enough machines. So they just dialed it back and did less and less to the point where they were doing none. Well, in North Carolina, we started with none, 0. So that'd be a good place to start. If we were going to look at an audit, we might look at these envelopes. Yeah, are we going to undo the 2020 election? Not likely, but we could certainly look at the envelopes and match the signatures and see how many of them were a problem. Hey, legislature, are you listening? That's a valid question. How many of these envelopes didn't match? Since in our haste to do the election and sweep it under the rug and say, we're not doing an audit, everything was fine. Besides, we won. Okay, I'm sorry that the Democrats maintain control of the governor's mansion, the state auditor, and the attorney general, the 3 offices with subpoena power in North Carolina. Okay, set that aside, and we had a good year. Okay, guys, that it's just not holding water anymore. You got to get out there and you got to do your own audit. You got to take authority back. You have the authority. The Constitution gives it to you. And yet, curiously and curious, I'm getting curious. Never mind. Now it's going to quote Alice in Wonderland, but blowing it. You have to do this. You have to do this. There's no option. And if you're anyone listening who's not a legislator, and if you have any money at all, and or any sense, no, we don't need sense. We need money because you will need to consider running against these guys. It will cost you money because they have all the money in Mordor. But we figure if put enough people on the table all across the state, holding your lawmakers accountable, basically, that's the spirit behind this. Can you see it? That's the spirit behind this is, hey, lawmakers, you can audit the election or you can pay the price. It's your call. I would hate to see, there's things I would hate to see about it, but there's also things we must see and we must know. Signatures is just one area that Arizona had it much better than we did. They said it was imperfect and requires improvement. North Carolina had zero signature verification on absentee ballots. Just saying. All right, voter rolls, item 2. Voter rolls require constant, unrelenting maintenance. This process should identify and correct voter registration for individuals who move, are deceased, or registered more than once. Relatably, records of voter turnout, ballots issued, ballots counted, and vote totals should facially reconcile with one another. Okay, I haven't read the report well enough to understand everything in there, but where this touches on North Carolina, actually, I'll go into the Cyber Ninja report here in a moment. Maybe I'll do it now. I want to go over to Ninja. These guys were incredible. Part of the key to these audits is you don't. I know there's some smart guys in North Carolina who think they can design an audit protocol that will create an unhackable election. I'm not going to go over all these slides. I just can't. You got to watch the videos. I'll try and get a link to it somewhere. But I want to go straight to the findings. Okay, official canvass has 3,432 more ballots than cast. More ballots cast than the list of people who show as having cast a vote. But don't worry, the final tallies were fine. They were perfect. Okay. 9,041 mail-in voters show returning more ballots than they were sent. But don't worry, the final score matched, and there was no evidence of tampering. Actually, there is evidence here. Bullet 3, 277 precincts show in the official canvass as having more ballots cast than people who showed up to vote, for a total of 1,551 excess votes. 277 precincts in Maricopa County. That's a big county. They got about double what Raleigh has, about 2 million people in Maricopa. So that's a big county. 277 precincts. This is a widespread problem. This is unbelievable, unbelievable. Okay, the fourth bullet. There are 2,472 ballots shown in EV33 that don't have corresponding entries in VM55, and only 2,042 ballots show as rejected in the official canvass for a discrepancy of 430. Okay, these are just different audit machines in their closed system, which is another problem about black box voting. When you hand it over to one vendor who's been EAC certified and has proprietary secretive software that nobody can see, including government, that's a problem. And we'll get more into that later. The point is, there were some mismatches there, but don't worry, the final results all match. So nothing to see here. Go back to sleep, lawmakers. Yeah, just go back to sleep there, tut, tut. See, these ninjas went into the weeds to show what the problem was. Let's see, and then the next bullet down that starts with 397, mail-in ballot shows received that never show as sent. That number was a lot bigger in the preliminary report. So now it's only 397. That's kind of disappointing because originally it was 14,000. So, okay. I guess they found the conveyance documents after all. At any rate, and then I don't understand what this means. The final bullet, I'll have to do some more research. I apologize, but there was a mismatch between the VM55 and the VM or EV33. I think the VM55 is the bigger. Okay, look at the third bullet. Precincts show the official canvass as having more ballots cast than people who showed up to vote. VM55. So I'm thinking the VM55 is the front door machine, like the poll book, and then the EV33 is the ballot tabulator machine. Just contextually, that's what I'm thinking. So in the poll book, early votes show that 255,326 early votes in the poll book listed as voting that do not have a corresponding EV33 entry. And that's a huge discrepancy. And this is why you're seeing guys like Bannon and Keschel and Trump even saying, decertify. This is it, ballgame. I don't care that your final scores matched. You had all this time, you stalled, they had all this time, they stalled. God only knows what they did while they were stalling. One thing we do know is what I'm going to go back to on the fan letter now. What were they doing while they were stalling? While they were suing, while they were doing everything to delay turning over any evidence, and they still just turned over some evidence last week after fighting for 6 months. This is really, really important. Paragraph 3 in the fan letter to the Attorney General of Arizona. Election integrity and machinery is too complicated and important to be overseen by amateurs. The audit found that Maricopa County failed to take basic cybersecurity precautions for securing election systems. Best practices and guidelines are published by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, which is available to counties at no cost. In light of these failures, our state should have a specialist or team of specialists to ensure that strict cybersecurity protocols are always followed. That is not an unreasonable expectation when modern elections depend on cybersecurity practices. Okay, the answer in North Carolina has been for Karen Prissy Bell to take all that cybersecurity at federal funding and make them people who work for her. You see the problem there? Legislature, you've got the money. You've got the authority. Take those cyber people, put them under your roof. You need some outside accountability. In Jay's world, you'd have 3 different agencies looking at them, not 2. You give who has cops? Which agencies have cops? Insurance? I don't know about Secretary of State. They might. Certainly the auditor does, and the AG. Anyway, the legislature the legislature has cops too, but they don't use them. They have authority they don't use, and we'll tell you more about that later. If they're not going to do the audit, prepare to be boarded. I am scallywag. All right, that's an easy one. Lawmakers, take that CISA money, take those CISA employees, and cut them over to your IG team. Oh, you haven't got one, do you? Oh, okay. You can find the money. You got all that staff for minions of bureaucrats to run around that building. You can find the money for that. So don't give me that chicken manure. The point is, you need to oversee these elections. Now, this is just one aspect of it, the machinery. I've had a rethink on this. I'm not a Deus ex machina kind of guy. I don't believe machines are the answer, but I'm more of a trust but verify kind of guy. I'm also a press to test, as you know. I'll press you to annoy you, and even when it blows up in my face, I'll go, okay, at least I know what happens when I press that button. I don't do it to annoy you. That was wrong. But anyway, we'll press a button to see what happens. And you have to be that way sometimes. You got to open a door to see what's in there. And our lawmakers are doing this. They don't want to open the door. They don't want to see because they're happy with the results. They're whistling past the graveyard is what they're doing, because the black box people let them win, let them keep their majority. Yeah, okay, maybe it was an exchange for all the positions of state that have subpoena power. Okay, maybe that was the Faustian bargain they made. And maybe the legislature agreed not to exercise their own subpoena power, which they do have. Spoiler alert, we'll tell you more about that later. Or get a hold of me if you're a lawmaker and I'll show it to you. You do have subpoena authority, you weenie. Didn't know that, did you? Okay. These machines, the cybersecurity is a big, big deal. Now, I'm gonna say one more thing there about the last part of that. List maintenance, where did I see that? Now we'll move forward. Okay, item 4, no private company should be trusted with keys to our democracy. If a county doesn't have it, I can't read suddenly. If a county doesn't have administrator passwords for its vote counting machines, the county cannot properly monitor its own elections. It's a double-edged sword. If you give them the password, maybe they can do something evil. If you don't give it to them, then ES&S, Hart Civic, and I can't remember the third one. There's 3 of them in North Carolina that have contracts. I want to say Vote Smart or something like that. Anyway, those 3 have they have the password, but you don't. So these private companies. By the way, who owns ES&S? That'd be a great audit question. Who owns you guys? They're held by a private trust. It's probably owned by Xi Jinping, who would be a great president, by the way, great, best president ever. It would probably be owned by the Chinese Communist Party, who sells component parts to the ES&S machinery. It'd probably be them, but we don't know that because it's held in a legally private trust. They have the password, they have the protocol, they have all the machine code, and we don't. That bothers me. It should bother you too. As a freedom fighter for our United States Air Force in charge of nuclear weapons, that's stupid. That's just stupid. That's just like selling components, letting components of your bombs be made by people who won't tell you how they're made, won't show you how they work. You just plug them into the bomb. I guarantee it'll work, or your money back. This is no way to run a railroad, a republic. Maybe it's a way to run a democracy, because democracy, after all, is two wolves and a sheep voting on what to eat. So then the wolves can rig elections. And that's kind of where we're at. So I guess in that sense, Karen Fan's right. We are a democracy, but we're not supposed to be. But we need some accountability here, folks. And our legislature better do it, because if they don't, then nobody will. And we've lost our republic. We've lost everything. This is it. This is the hill to die on, guys. Okay, item 5 in the Karen Fan letter to the Attorney General of Arizona. Election officials must ensure that all evidence is preserved, that a top to bottom audit of an election is possible when warranted. Stop there for now. It's a 22-month shelf life on that. And yet, there's certain things about North Carolina we don't even, if you don't collect it, you don't have to retain it. For example, ballot images, the ES&S, the machinery, the protocol is that the machines will take an image of each ballot and it'll read the images to get the results instead of reading the ballot. Did you know that? It actually reads an image. The trick to this is that our machines are configured, I'm told, our machines are configured not to take an image of every ballot. They only take an image of the undervote, overvote ballots, and they ignore all others. So, okay, you can't destroy forensic image if it's not there. So you can't be, I would say they're breaking the law up front by not getting the images, but that's down in the weeds. And this is where lawmakers, if you dare listen to what I'm telling you, that's something you got to fix. Is these people they're hiding evidence by not collecting it up front. That's part of the problem. The other problem is they let ES&S come in and update their machines even before the cyber symposium. They were letting them completely wipe the machines and get ready for the next election. This is no way to run a republic. Now, what we would recommend is something we'll talk about another day, but I'll give you a hint. Open source. Get rid of all these ES&S machines. Just send them to the scrapyard of history. But before you do, pop them open and look to see if there's any modem chips on the motherboards. I'm really curious about that. But funny, you're not. Oh, that's right. ES&S said there weren't, and it's against the law. So, okay, I see why you're not. You don't want to know, do you? Okay, sentence 2. The audit found that Maricopa County overwrote the entire activity log of its elections management system. That doesn't surprise me. I bet North Carolina has too, but they didn't do it under threat. Maricopa had to do it by churning more than 37,000 identical queries several days after the court ordered Maricopa to produce its election materials to the Arizona State Senate. I don't know, I lost my highlight on that. Okay. All right, now we got to pick that apart. So while they were delaying in turning over the evidence, they were destroying the evidence. This is a violation of federal law. That's what happened in Arizona. 37,000 identical queries several days after the count ordered Maricopa County to produce this election materials. They destroyed the evidence. Okay, we don't even know what evidence was destroyed in North Carolina. Now, what they're supposed to do is before they allow ES&S to come in and tinker with the machines, they're supposed to take a forensic snapshot of everything on that machine. And then when ES&S leaves, they can check the differences. Did they do that? I don't know, because nobody's looking. And Karen Prissy Bell said, hey, everything's fine. Imagine having no accountability. Imagine having the control to tell the Speaker of the House that you're not Speaker of the House anymore. You lost your job because of the work we did. And here's the proof. Here's some numbers. Well, how'd you get those numbers? I'm not going to show you. Wait, I paid you to do this process. What do you mean you're not going to show me? It's proprietary information. I can't show it to you. Besides, okay, so you sue to try and get the information, and suddenly the evidence is gone because ES&S came through and did a wipe and redid the information. This is a huge problem that has to be fixed now. Don't wait until we get a veto-proof majority. Now, what you can do now, since you don't have a veto-proof majority, you can gather evidence, and then you can make the Democrats sweat if they're the ones who are blocking you. But I don't think the Democrats are. I mean, yeah, I guess they're blocking you too. But I happen to know there are some people on the Democrat side who are very worried about this, but they can't step forward because they too are under the control of their House and Senate leadership. It's a problem for them. The same problem we have with the despicable leadership we have in North Carolina on the majority side, that they don't want to look. And those who do are going to get primaried. They're going to have those caucus funds used against them. I'm telling you, folks, if you can't get your local lawmaker to get on board with this, then consider running against them. It's just, I don't know what other choice we have. Either just give away the republic and just wait, just sit back and wait to get mandatory vaccines for everybody. And who knows, I might even have to every night plug in and get an OS update to our system, just like the Borg on Star Trek. Okay, next paragraph, next sentence. Maricopa County has also failed to provide documentation sufficient to reconcile duplicate ballots to corresponding original ballots. Okay, there's a comma after that. Refused to cooperate with the audit, comma, and directed its vendors not to cooperate with the audit either. Hello, this is North Carolina. Our vendors, they're not going to give anything to the legislature unless they take it. Oh, but the legislature doesn't want it. Okay, I'll beat that to death some other day. I think I'm getting tired of hearing all this. We're running along on this one. She closes these 5 paragraphs. Our laws should require transparency and affirmative cooperation from every election official. Arizona voters deserve an unimpeachable electoral process, and the state Senate is already working hard on new legislation to deliver that. Meanwhile, in North Carolina, our lawmakers are fighting doing an audit and are, they say they're going to make reforms, but they don't know what they are. They don't know what happened. So that's called window dressing. They want to make some feel-good reforms. They can run around saying, hey, we fixed it. Or maybe their silly little party chair running around saying 2020 was perfect, the most honest election ever, even though we didn't check signatures on any absentee ballots. These people have got to go. They've got to go. This is your party. If that's what you want, that's what you get. But I'm telling you, people need to step up. And it doesn't just mean hitting the like button on Facebook. You got to put down your computer, get out there and do some work. Now there's canvases that are going to happen. We're going to make them do this. And we're going to make them do it by doing a citizen canvass. Only hopefully we're not going to screw it up like the Arizona citizen canvassers did. They got some good work, but they took some research errors that devastated the impact of their work. That just totally changed the subject. There's too much evidence out there of trouble to sit there and ignore it. By the way, with all these problems, I just want to remind you that the final tally, I'm going to go back. I'm sorry if you're watching on screen. I apologize for bouncing around. But it's the trickeration of all trickerations that matching quadruple check, and I commend Maricopa, the Senate for doing this. They even bought their own machines. the most important finding in the audit is something that'll warm the heart of every never Trumper out there. The auditor's final hand count, which quadruple check every single one of the 2.1 million ballots, matches Maricopa's official machine count. This is the most important and encouraging finding of the audit. And lest we forget, in Durham County, there was no evidence ballots were altered to favor a specific candidate or political party, even though the guy manipulated 1,900 ballots. Okay, and then add to that the Cyber Ninja findings. I'm not going to read them again, but if you're watching on video, you can ignore what I'm saying, just read it. But there are a lot of bad numbers there, a lot of really problematic electoral administrative problems that we don't know what the impact of them was. But hey, they managed to balance the books. So we have a big problem here, and I don't know if we can fix it. The best hope we have for fixing it would be to do a full-scale audit. I'd be happy. I know you guys in the legislature hate my guts, but I'd be happy to help you in any way to get some things done that will actually make a difference. And if anybody out there is still thinking a special prosecutor is going to solve this problem, let me close with this idea. It's something I posted on Facebook, and I think it kind of lays it out pretty well. You got to note the order of events here. So the Arizona Senate, they conducted an audit. They found things that were very problematic. I'm telling you, paragraph 4, they broke the people at the Maricopa County supervising election. They broke the law. They destroyed federal record-keeping documents. They destroyed, I mean, you look at the federal record-keeping laws regarding election forensic material, you're not allowed to destroy it. And yet they did. Someone's got to pay for that. So the order was, the audit identified the problem, made the criminal referral from the Senate over to the Attorney General. Now the ball's in the Attorney General court. This Attorney General will either prosecute it or will appoint a special prosecutor. We've got some distraction specialists in the legislature, and they have their minions out. They know who they are. Minions that are saying, hey, we don't need to audit, we just need to prosecute. Prosecute what? How do you prosecute anything without knowing what happened? You don't know what happened. So what do you prosecute? Oh, we saw no evidence, therefore nothing to prosecute. See how that works? So the order is audit, referral, prosecute. That's it. It's that simple. There are no shortcuts. So anyone who's telling you there is. It's just trying to stall the clock to get past September 3rd of 2022, because on that magic date, these election officials, it's like game on. They can destroy everything, including the absentee ballot envelopes that have no signatures on, or have just a line drawn where the signature is. All that is gone. So for now, if you're going to beg, keep begging your legislator. But I'm telling you, you need to start quietly looking around for someone with pockets deep enough to launch a good campaign. And then the money will come to them. I mean, but they have to invest money up front to hire one of these god-awful political consultants to go and help them with their campaign. We'll try and fix that, but they're hard. It's hard to find good ones. Anyway, recruit, go recruit candidates. So item 1, go ahead and bag them. Item 2, recruit candidates to run against them. And for those of you who are, then pay those candidates, offer them money, start setting up draft committees and raise money for them and get those committees going and get these candidates ready to go. And this is an issue. This is a hill we die on, folks. Either we live or we die, and this hill is what kills us. If we lose this ballot, but we lose this election, looking at what happened this past election, picture what happened at the border, what's been happening at the border for the last couple of months. Visualize that over your ballot box. They're stuffing, they're getting away with it, and there's nothing we can do about it because we don't know for sure. I can make allegations and I just sound like a nut job, but this is what the audit will accomplish. But oddly enough, they'd rather shoot the messenger than deal with the message. They need to be replaced. That's all I can say. All right, I think we're done here. Enough damage for one day. So, yep, I'm not going to put this sign back up. I'll just tell you, Have a blessed Sunday, Saturday, and y'all get used to this. I don't want to do these on Saturday. They're just a lot of trouble. And my wife would prefer I didn't do it as well because there's things we like to do on Saturdays. Okay, have a great weekend. Fight. Don't forget God first, family. From Jada Lindsay, go check her out of here. Okay. 11 o'clock. Yep. I was trying to find it. Well, you can see if you have it up. Well, Doc made food, yes. And Natalie had a luscious chocolate cake too. No. All right, let me go take care of business. I still got some stuff to do with this.